Hello and welcome to the show. Now, last couple of weeks, you know that I've been having guests that are known around the world for what they do. And they're very interesting and inspiring personalities that are coming to South Africa. One of those people is Sheikh Faraz Rabbani. I know that I've been following him on Twitter. He says he's not following me, but that's fine. He's got a few other accounts going on. But he's an interesting personality. Listen to some of the things over the last couple of days. Someone that you'd really want to know. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Now, I've always heard your name. Your name stands out there when people talk about scholars around the world. Your name comes up. And so this inspiring personality, and I always say that when you see an inspiring personality, there's a story behind that person. And so as a scholar, all that you normally do is stand up in the mosque, discussing issues and telling our community how to be better people, and that's what you do. But for me, it's important to understand you, Sheikh Faraz Rabbani. The history, the kids, things that you do and things that inspire you. How do I define Sheikh Faraz Rabbani?
That's a complicated question. Actually, I asked myself that question growing up because I grew up all over the world. I did most of my high school in Spain, in Madrid. And then just in the final year of high school, we moved back to Canada. So I had a crisis of identity. Who am I?
An international one.
Yeah, an international one. Am I Pakistani or Indian? Because I was born in Karachi, but my parents' roots are from India. Didn't feel particularly Pakistani, though I kind of did. I know Urdu, but never grew up there. I'm certainly not Spanish, though I know Spanish fluently. Went to high school there. Most of my friends were from there. Lived in England, certainly not British. Had a lot of anti-colonial sentiments, but went to a British school. And then ended up back in Canada. Now I have a Canadian citizenship. And at that time, had never really spent much time in Canada since I was very, very small. Didn't really feel Canadian.
So it's a world pass.
Yeah, so am I nobody?
Yeah.
Or who am I?
Or are you everybody?
Yeah. And then, okay, I'm Muslim, but what in the world does that mean? So it was a real mixture of influences growing up.
So with all of that happening, do you not feel that, we're just gonna jump a bit forward there, do you not feel that has played a role in who you are today? Because everything that happens for a reason, and I feel that I think that's a very rich history to have that, because you should have a better understanding of the world and people because of that experience.
Yes, I mean, it's been a blessing in that sense as well, especially because then when I went for my Islamic studies, I found myself circumstantially teaching online. But I think it was much easier for me because I'm dealing with a diverse range of people asking questions, students from different countries and backgrounds, and I was very used to that growing up. Even in high school, I'd already been to 30 odd countries, just because not only did we travel to many places, live in many places, but my father loves traveling, so we'd go all over the place for vacations. So that that really helped in what I started doing and I'm engaged in right now.
Your interest in Islam, as from a studies point of view, was that something that was ingrained in the family or came along from a history point of view, or was there some defining moments in your life where you felt that, like some youngsters do, they're either going that way or they're going that way? Was there this defining time for that?
I mean, my parents were always very nurturing, and and we had a very good upbringing, but they never pushed anything on us. But then ending high school and first year university, that's when really I had the realization that the one thing that does define my identity is that I am Muslim. And that's really what spurred me to want to study the religion more in depth.
Great. So it's coming out of high school, and you've now already been around the world at that age. So is that the time that you settled in Canada, and where does the marriage happen and the children come? The settling down part, is Canada the settling down part?
Well, when I was at university, I decided end of first year that I wanted to go and study the religion. But thankfully, something that was ingrained in me growing up was that always consult. Right? Always respect those who have more experience and consult them. So I was hoping to just go off and study, but everyone I consulted, scholars, community leaders, everyone said, finish your university studies first, which was very frustrating. Then in university, decided I wanted to get married, but I was pretty convinced that why would, like, someone would have to be really crazy to marry me. 'Cause I wanted to go overseas, somewhere remote to study. For a while, the destination of choice was Sudan. And I was like, no one's going to marry me. Like, no girl from Canada
with the same mind is going to do that.
Is going to go overseas to study. And even if she wanted to, her parents won't say yes. They said, well, I'll get married in Sudan. But I said, in Sudan, no one from one of the big cities, Khartoum or Durman, is going to marry me. So it'd probably have to be from a village. And if from a village, no father would let his young daughter marry me. So she'd have to be old, presumably very old, like 40 years old, been married 5 times, has 15 kids, has only maybe 5 teeth left.
Yes, of course.
Like probably really overweight, whatever. I had this funny vision.
So you actually thought this through. And
Yeah, and I'd done theater growing up in high school,
Yes.
and I was a theater critic at university for the first couple of years.
Okay, that's something many people don't know.
Yeah, probably not.
Yes.
And thankfully, it was in the pre-Google age, so you
Yes.
can't find much about it online. So I sort of dramatized it. I used to tell everybody, especially at reaching 3rd and 4th year university, people start talking about marriage plans, career plans. So I say, look, no one's going to marry me. So I think a whole network of my friends took it upon themselves, we have to get him married. And I was actually engaged to marry someone else from a different part of the world, but she said no. And then all of a sudden, all
Did
these
you
people
hear
said,
about your plans to go to Sudan?
no, she was very keen as well. And for her family probably
Yes.
would have been very supportive. They were
Yes.
very active in the community. But then suddenly all these people all said, haven't you considered so-and-so, my wife? And it was actually kind of freakish, because when the other thing was called off, there's this Egyptian graduate student. And he looked at me, because I'd spent like 4 months on like cloud 11, 2 levels above cloud 9.
That's
with
very
this
high up.
goofy lover smile, like, we'd have MSA meetings and they're discussing plans.
You know that I can't see you in that zone
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. So
But,
I'd
you
be
know.
like, I'd be staring at the clouds and be say, what do you think? Say, yeah, it's fine. And everyone would laugh at me. Like, there's like sisters I knew, if I was walking down the street, people started laughing at me because I was just like lost. But then the day the other thing got called off, from a distance by email, actually it was by an internet chat. It was actually by, like, it was not even, this is pre-internet.
Yes.
It was like a virtual chat. They had these online chat
Yes.
rooms. And she said, look, I don't think it's going to work out. I said, okay. So this graduate student asked me.
So that didn't devastate you. That was just
No,
part
I was
of the.
on the verge of devastation.
Okay.
But I went to pray Dhuhr.
Yes.
And this Egyptian grad student looks at me. I'm looking kind of sad. But, you got to deal with life as it is. What are you going to do?
Yes.
He looks at me and said, Brother Faraz, you look not so happy. I said, that engagement, it's called off.
Yes.
So he just looked at me and smiled and said, it's all good. And he quoted these verses from Surah Al-Talaq.
Yes.
That وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, that whoever remains mindful of Allah, Allah will grant them a way out.
Yes.
And provide from them in ways they couldn't imagine.
Yes.
And whoever places their trust in Allah, He is their sufficiency. And He has a particular destiny for everything.
Yes.
And it really struck me. So I was like, wow, that we know it as faith, it's true, but in that moment, it really struck me. And I kid you not, after Dhuhr, I walked out on the street, and then this Muslim sister who, she worked in the MSA as well, but didn't really know well, she just stopped me in the middle of the road and said, Brother Faraz, what's wrong with you? And like our relationship was so distant, she didn't even know I was engaged. Says, what's wrong with you? Haven't you considered Sister Shireen for marriage?
So this was out of the blue kind of thing.
Completely out of the blue.
Yes.
I said, no. And she just walks away. So I'm thinking, what in the world just happened? I walked to the library, like a few hundred meters up the road, go get in the library. I'm having tea with a friend of mine. And out of the blue changes, I said, by the way, are you blind? Haven't you considered Sister Shireen for marriage? I'm like,
So this is a sign above
that's
cloud.
weird. Then
above 11.
And, went down to the computer terminals, because, this is late 90s, this is really on the cusp of the internet,
Yes.
like 94, 95.
Still bordering on prehistoric.
Yeah. So there, you had to go to these computer terminals in the basement of the main library for your email access. Went there, and a sister from Kansas emails me. We used to work on an MSA newsletter, and she emailed, "Are you blind?" ? Is a subject line, and she said exactly the same thing. So that's the third person. I'm like, what in the world is going on? This is like some cosmic message. I get home much later than I should, and my mother is there sitting on a couch, like she was preparing some vegetables for the next day, like shredding beans or something. She looks at me, says, "Faraz, you're blind." I said, "Why?" I said, "Haven't you considered Shireen from him?" I'm like, what in the world's going on?
There's a conspiracy going on
yes,
somewhere.
Alhamdulillah. So got married. I still had 1 year left of university.
So you got married to Shireen?
Yes, I got married.
I mean, the signs were clear.
Yes, and actually when I thought about, because we'd been working together in the MSA, etc., and turns out she also had wanted to go overseas, but it didn't seem like a feasible plan. So it worked out. Of course, there's a few hurdles on the way, which is like I'm broke. My parents are not going to support a wacky plan like this.
Yes.
And they had limited means. Her parents are both wealthy professionals, so for their daughter to get married to some wacky guy who's broke, still in university and going overseas.
Yes.
So how do we do this? So he said, well, if you benefit of studying management, as I did, he said, well, you have to have a strategic plan. So alhamdulillah, while doing everything in a legit halal manner, we agreed that there's no way that the parents can meet. Because there's in marriage, there's what's called a PMX, the parental meeting equation.
Oh.
Which is basically
that's something new.
That if your parents are 70% convinced, her parents are 80% convinced, you'd think that it'll work out.
Matches.
But it's like a multiplication. 0.7 times 0.8 is only 0.56. Right?
That's an interesting one.
Right?
I need to write this one down.
When they both meet together, their confidence, actually it's not even 0.56, because their confidence will go down 10%. So it'll go down from 0.7 to 0.6 on one side, 0.8 to 0.7. So you end up at, instead of 0.56, 56% chance of agreement, it'll drop down to like 42%. And you wonder, where did it happen?
She can answer your question.
Yeah.
Were you really being this methodical about this entire thing?
No, because it was only a fool would enter into a losing proposition.
Yes.
So how do you win? And so you have to have a plan. I said, okay, we need to have a proper strategy to make this work. Said, well, what we'll do, you convince your parents, I'll convince mine. But until they're completely convinced, we have to take every means for them not to meet, even if they want to. Even if they say, okay, yes. So alhamdulillah, we had a plan, and we kept things we consulted some of my teachers, said, no, this is okay. As long as you keep your interactions legitimate. So we had no social contact, etc. But alhamdulillah, it was wacky, but it was like climbing a high mountain. If you have a good plan, it'll work. We had the marriage date set, tentatively, before the parents met. Right? So it was
quite strategic, I must admit.
Yeah, but it worked. Right? It worked. Because if you really want something, do it in the right way and have the right plan to make it happen.
Question here. Did you believe that Shireen at that time was the person for you? Because remember, you're going from a situation where you're bumping into everyone and they're saying Shireen. But for you, was it Shireen?
But I hadn't thought, because we were very involved in our MSA. I ran a Muslim magazine called The Muslim Voice, which actually, alhamdulillah, is still running, like almost 20 years later now. Actually, 22 years later, since when we started it. So we were both editors on the magazine. We worked at the regional MSA level, at the national MSA level. We were co-editors of the MSA National MSA Starters Guide. So I knew her extremely well, but it was like an activist relationship.
Yes.
I'd never thought about her in terms of marriage or anything like that.
Correct.
So, but I knew her well. So when I did consider her, I was like, that's exactly the kind of person that I would have been looking for.
Correct.
Right? So alhamdulillah, it was, it was fortuitous, but at the same time, I think for me, a very useful life lesson is that if you want something, you know, pursue it in the right way and have a right plan of pursuit.
Correct. So the children comes and you get a bit more busy because the profile of you goes up there. I mean, people know you around the world and that sort of thing. How did you start dealing with all of that? Because here you've got the family coming up at the same time. Your brand is getting out there, I'm assuming, at sort of the same time. And things are happening for you. How do you cope with all of that?
Well, we got married in 1996, a year before going overseas in the final year of university, and then we traveled overseas together. We didn't have children till 6 years after marriage, right? Because my wife also studied for a number of years in Damascus and then in Jordan, and then we had children, and we had children actually right around when. A year after I started teaching online, right? I started answering questions, and we started Sunni Path with one of the first widely available Islamic online courses. So there was an advantage in that I did not have a public presence on the ground. I was living in Amman. I had private classes for students of knowledge there, in both locals and. I was teaching in Arabic, and also for Westerners who would go through Amman for their studies, but most of the presence was online. Right? The answer service became very popular. The online courses, soon we had hundreds, and then over 1,000 online students. But it was from a distance, right? That I was just some random dude in the neighborhood, right? And then I did not travel, I didn't do any lecture tours or anything like that till much, much later. The first time I traveled for a lecture tour was 2005.
Yes.
So for a period of 5 years, although there's a lot of requests coming, and I think it's part of the benefit of being sort of spiritually grounded, having a spiritual path and having spiritual mentors, that one of my teachers warned that beware of microphone fever.
Yes.
It's a sickness that if you catch,
correct, yes,
the cure is very difficult.
Correct, yes.
So that, I always saw like what I'm doing, it's a service. It's a service that I'm doing. It's not it's not personal branding or
correct, yes,
this and that. So until there was a clear, palpable need to travel, I didn't do so.
Correct, yes. Now, I know that you as a personality, you inspire a lot of people around the world by doing what you do. Who are the people around today that inspire you, and who do you sort of take that energy from?
Really, I think a source of inspiration that very often we neglect, particularly people of our generation, is, and we established before this interview that we're not that far apart in,
yes,
in years, is one's parents. Right? It's easy to overlook them. Right? It's easy.
I love the idea when someone says that, because I'm sort of very attached to my parents, but very more to my mother's side, and I talk about this in public all the time. So when you go out in public as a TV host and people think that you're this very modern kind of person, but you rock up at the school talking about how close you are with your mother, while youth at school are trying to, I don't want to be seen with my mother and father, they find that shocking. So I love the idea that you're saying that.
Yeah. So I mean, my parents have always been very facilitative. So even when I wanted to go overseas and study, my father's main concern was, isn't Syria dangerous? And at that time, actually, it wasn't. Right? And we discussed it through. My dad was a bit upset, but very unusually, a friend of his told him off, because his friend is of a Shia background. He said, I go to Syria every year to visit the Ahl al-Bayt who are buried in Syria, and it's a wonderful place. So my dad just had one condition. He said, Beta, don't embarrass us.
Yes.
Do what you want, don't embarrass us. And if you do something, do it well.
It's a condition that sort of covers
yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, so that was very good. But it's important, respecting one's parents and benefiting from their life experience is important, and it doesn't entail that you do everything that they do, because your circumstances are different. It also doesn't entail that this may be politically correct, that you necessarily listen to the specifics of what they always might be saying, but you have to have respect for them. you have to benefit from their wisdom and their experience. And even when they tell you things that you disagree with, right, consider it with respect, and they may be making the point in a wrong way, but they may be underlying concerns that are legitimate.
Correct. It's always about you doing the correct thing.
Yeah.
I don't think any parent out there wants you to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So it's always about that in the end of the day.
So that's been a big inspiration, but also, sort of religiously, a number of of the scholars from what we could call the Western traditional Muslim revival, figures such as Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, Sheikh Nuh Keller, and then later Imam Zaid Shakir, Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah. These have been figures that have been and remain an inspiration. A number of them. I have a mentorship relationship with people like Imam Zaid Shakir and Dr. Omar, and they're remarkable human. And Sheikh Nuh Keller, who is my personal teacher and guide. So these are, and it's always important to have relationships of mentorship in life, not just religiously, but also in any field of activity.
Great. If you had the opportunity of speaking to your younger self, probably 15 years old, 17 years old, what would you say to Faraz Rabbani, 17 years old?
That's a difficult question at one level, because one's life experiences enrich one, right? If one learns the positive lessons from them. Right? So, I mean, there's no rewind button on life, right? You can't say, oops, let me go back and,
Did you see the world perhaps differently now?
Yeah, of course, very differently, right? Very differently. But I think so many of those experiences were so enriching. In high school in Spain, I was involved with environmental causes, Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace and this and that. But that was very, that was very enriching. One of the beautiful things that I learned from that is my parents were very facilitative in a beautiful way. I never felt pushed by them, but they're good shepherds, right? That if I look back I was in a school where there's pretty much no Muslims. But if I look at the company I kept, they're all people who had, good purposes in life. My friends, I stay in touch with many of my friends from high school. They're all not Muslim, but this guy's an environmentalist. This guy's a marine biologist. This guy is involved in meaningful things. They're wholesome people doing good.
Correct.
And my parents facilitated that. They nurtured that. So that's a beautiful lesson. But what would I go back and change? I mean, we can't change that circumstance. I mean, I would have wanted greater religious exposure earlier, but that wasn't our circumstance. My parents taught me what they could in the home environment with all the vicissitudes of life. But living in Madrid at that time, there wasn't much of a religious community, etc. So things come when they're destined to come.
Correct, yes. In conclusion, I know that your wife, there's probably lots of lonely time because you are always traveling around the world. I'm not sure if she travels with you at some times or not, but there are lots of sacrifices with people that take the public space, because we know what that's all about. What's your message to her in conclusion? What did you want to say to her, knowing that she puts up with things that many people don't?
As a background to that, anyone who's involved in leadership or activism, it's very important to keep a balance.
Correct, yes.
Right? So one of the things I'm careful about is that
balance.
I limit how much I travel internationally, etc., to certain periods. But even within the community, there's certain types of engagement that I take on, and there's other areas where I deliberately disengage from. So that it's very important to maintain that
management of time.
Yeah, that balance between one's work, one's general community involvement, one's out of home time, and the time with family and home. So keeping that balance is important, so that one gives one's family their due, but also to keep a sustainable balance in one's own service to the community and society. And in order to be able to dedicate oneself to service, one of the greatest blessings one can have is a supportive spouse, and that's the greatest blessing in my life.
So your message to her is that
It's Jazakallah khair. She's
she is that support for you.
Extremely supportive and thankful, and she has a really good sense about it too. She's been trying to convince me, because we're at this retreat in the Drakensberg.
Yes, I heard about it. Yes,
outside Durban, and she's been with the kids now for 2 weeks, right? And we homeschool, so they're home a lot. So I told her, well, because I was on FaceTime, so that video. She says, "What's that in the back?" I said, "They're donkeys." So she said, "Could you put on a turban and ride the donkey and take a selfie?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Because your travel's been a bit difficult, so let me give me something to laugh about."
Yeah, no, of
I
course.
said, "I'm not getting on a donkey for you."
Yes.
Please. So I called her last night. We're going to Masjid Awal.
Yes.
And she said, "Are there any donkeys in Cape Town?" I said, "Why?" She said, "I'm still waiting for the picture."
No, of course.
So it's important to have that positive attitude,
Correct,
right?
yes.
And that's one of the real blessings that I find from my wife.
Sheikh, thank you for coming onto the show. It's been an inspiration for me to meet people like you that's busy making this change around the world. So I thank you for coming onto the show.
Barakallahu feekum.
Sheikh Faraz Rabbani, as you can hear, very inspiring story. Lots of talk about the parents, about his diversity with regards to nationalities, understanding people. And what I really loved about him, and I'm saying this in front of him, is this calmness and this collectiveness, which one doesn't always find with people that are always moving around the world. They're always these hectic people. So I really love that. Until next time, thank you for joining us. Goodbye.